Welcome to Real Parenting for the Sensitive Moms, for moms who feel everything and still show up. I'm Adrienne Bishop, your co-host and parenting coach.
And I'm Leah and Adrienne, your co-host and perinatal mental health therapist. We're here to help you understand your sensitivity, give you real tools that actually work, and connect you with a community of moms who truly get it. In this episode, we will be talking to Trina Stutzman about the important topic of people-pleasing. Trina is not a guru on a mountaintop. She's a guide by your side. A recovering people-pleaser herself, Trina uses her mess to deliver a message. The world needs you, not some watered-down version.
She's the author of 12 Steps to Overcome People-Pleasing and a wellness-focused life and executive coach who helps women drop the hustle, ditch the people-pleasing, and step into joy, freedom, and flow. With a mix of humor, heart, and hard-won wisdom, Trina empowers individuals to stop lying, tell the truth, and live boldly as themselves.
Thank you, Trina, so much for coming on. Obviously, I love talking with you about this topic, but could you first tell our listeners, what is people pleasing? What does that look like? How would we know if we're a people pleaser?
Thank you for inviting me. It's just an honor to be here and to be a part of your community and share my wisdom. So yeah, I kind of define people pleasing as prioritizing other people's well-being over our own. So we are constantly not making ourselves a priority. I've been accused of teaching selfishness, but I really say I'm teaching people how to have a self. So places where we are not honoring and valuing and loving ourselves as much as we love other people. That can look like a lot of different things. From my book, I described 20 characteristics, and I'm just going to quickly read those, and maybe you'll identify with some of those. Overly accommodating, walks on eggshells around others, plays the martyr, feels like you never get to do what you want, obsesses about others, agitated thinking, neglectful, passive-aggressive, avoids conflict, overgives. Others tell you that you're too sensitive, which is our topic today, highly sensitive moms, and overthinkers, judgmental, has high expectations for self and others, afraid to speak freely, feels stuck, thinks everyone knows better, feels like no one ever listens, needs validation, and avoids appearing needy. I find those to be some of the most common ones. Of course, they can be characteristics of other conditions that we have, but people-pleasing is really not honoring and valuing ourselves as much as we value and honor others.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, where does this tendency to people please come from?
It can be based in trauma, so I'm careful around that when I say that people pleasers are liars, because it is a trauma response. I do believe it's not a personality trait. I do believe it comes kind of from our nervous systems and from that highly sensitive. I think we're very intuitive folks, that we're always kind of hypervigilant. I like to use the word hyper because I think we can tend to be constantly scanning, always kind of looking for ways that we can please others. And I think a lot of times it comes from cultural and religious backgrounds, upbringings. Many of us have, seen it modeled in our families of origin, these women who tend to overplease. And I like to think of that word overly as a word that we use frequently in people pleasing. We can be kind and generous, but it's when we're overly kind and overly generous to the expense of our well-being that we get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah, it's like when you are sensitive and you're noticing everything. So you're noticing everyone's reactions, even if it's subtle, like in their facial expression or in their tone. And you're interpreting that as something that may not be actually true or there, but since you're noticing all of it, you're more sensitive to maybe not having it happen or causing it to happen, because it can be very uncomfortable. So it makes sense that if you're more sensitive, just having the awareness of what's happening around you can increase your sensitivity to how people are responding to you. I have people that I know that will just miss all those cues, and they tend to not be as people pleasing, right? They tend to not be as overgiving, like you were saying, because they just doesn't bother them because they don't notice it.
Right. And we're always trying to make a connection. What does it mean? We're always putting labels to things that we see and what it means for us. We're kind of like I said, the hyper-vigilant, hyper-focused on how we can be helpful and how we can be kind and how we can be loving and pleasing. Those are all good things, but when they become things that we do in excess, is when our well-being is affected.
Yeah. Would you say, because you also said a trauma response, do you see the people pleasing as a nervous system response? because our nervous system is being activated when we're being very hyper aware of everything. Would you say more of a nervous system response rather than, say, a personality trait of somebody?
I think it's a learned behavior, whether that's from trauma or from culture or from religion. I think it's something that sensitive souls tend to pick up. And, we kind of lose ourselves in that pleasing. I think it's a journey to kind of uncover that person underneath there because we've been layered over trying to please.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as a child, let's say you're learning the coping skill of people pleasing. Would that look like someone maybe noticing that the people around them or their parents are very either high emotion or high conflict? And then the response that the child has is to hide themselves in order to not be involved in the conflict or not cause the conflict. Does that sound like an example maybe of what it would look like?
Yeah, that would be an example. I think sometimes like, oh, I was raised in a very conditional home where love was conditional. And I think for me, I just perceived it that way. If I was good and compliant, then I was more accepted and more valued as opposed to when, I stepped into speaking my truth and I got, don't talk back, that's, you saw the parent get angry. Well, you didn't want that. So you tended to shrink.
Yeah. And also, I noticed that when I would be too much, it would be stressful for my parents. There was a lot going on. So I didn't want to be the cause of the burden, right, of the stress. And so I think sometimes that can be a shrinking response too, in that respect. I was wondering how hormonal shifts might affect people pleasing.
Good question. I can say this postmenopausal that I feel a lot less willing to people please.
Me too.
And I think that in some ways that started my journey, even ending my marriage, was just that I'm not tolerating as much as I used to. And I actually was just talking to a friend about that the other day, wondering that for myself if that was part of some of my journey.
Yeah, I was noticing being in perimenopause, my shift also away from the desire to people please and feeling almost like it was stifling to put myself second, and saying things without a filter that I never said before. And I can tell pretty quickly that it has to be hormonal. It can't be just I'm all of a sudden a different person or I've now lost all my coping skills or whatever, or I've changed. But if it is a hormonal, possibly affected by hormonal shifts, it makes sense that the hormones we have pre the perimenopause shift are leading us to those tendencies. Does that make sense? So the estrogen we have kind of coursing through as we're
Hmm.
early 20s and 30s and even as a child like that's leading us to sort of comply with rules and be more people pleasing because we have to have babies and we have to be in society and we have to be in a group and we have to survive, and then once they leave us it's almost like, wait, this function is no longer useful to me in a sense. And so I think maybe it's cultural, maybe it's biological, but just the estrogen that women have, I just wonder if that leads a little bit more toward that tendency. Also, do you find that?
Yeah, I think that'll be my second addition to my book.
Yes, yes.
Something definitely to look at and to pay attention to. I don't know that I would have made any different choices in my life based on based on that
Yeah,
information, but I think it's important to look at how what we get tired of. I kind of say I coach women who are sick and tired, and I think we do get to a point where we've exhausted ourselves from over giving and being overly kind and over generous with our time and energy, that it
for
does
sure.
leave us exhausted.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, with all of this, do you feel that as women that are more sensitive, highly sensitive women, do you think it makes it harder to overcome some people pleasing? Like, even if someone's in perimenopause or menopause, but they are sensitive, do you think they would still struggle with people pleasing probably longer a little bit?
I think it's just we are having to bring ourselves forward, and from a child being sensitive, if we didn't want to show that person, that little girl, she's just covered up. And I think one of my first steps in parenting and on this journey was spending time with myself getting to know myself apart from what I thought my religion and culture wanted me to be, that role. So spending time alone and saying, yeah, what is Trina like? What does Trina want to wear? And it started for me with dress at first, what do I like without my mother's voices or my sisters or my girlfriends, and it was really started with an outward expression of what I was feeling inside. So yeah, I think it's important that we get to know ourselves through the hormonal changes, because we do change. Nothing stays the same, and neither do we. So it's important that we keep discovering who we are. But at the core, I think sensitivity is a superpower. I think, I have resisted that too muchness, or thought I was too much for a long time, but it is really a superpower. It is how we move around in the world, and we're creatives, we're intuitives, we are nurturing. We are the biggest nurturers, I think, because we have that sensitivity. I think it just, for me, I think I did a lot of people pleasing in hopes that it would be reciprocated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when it's not, when people aren't caring and loving me in the same way that I love, then the resentment grows. And then that's when we're afraid to have the hard conversations or to step into those hard conversations, then the resentfulness comes and the exhaustion when we're not feeling heard and seen.
You were just making me think of my daughter because she's 15 and she's always had this, like, I want to say maybe not tendency to people please as much as I was as a kid. And I just admire that so much in her. She's able to say what she thinks and feels, at least to people that are close to her. And I'm just interesting to think about, is it a generational thing also? Because I
Yes.
feel like the kids that are now, in their teens or maybe even preteens, I feel like they just have been given more permission to speak freely. And not only that, probably they're parented differently in a way that allows them to speak, with their own voice and be their own person. I mean, maybe that's just something that happened to be my daughter and people I know, or maybe it is
Yeah.
generational.
I think it's generational, and I think it's a credit to you, Adrienne, for I think your daughter, I imagine, feels really safe to share who she is. I think for a lot of us, our parents didn't know the language of feelings and emotions, and so it wasn't safe to give an opinion or to express something that one day you felt and maybe the next day you didn't, but you wanted to say it that day.
Yes, yes.
And so even with my kids, I think I was much more in tune to hearing their language of feelings. And I have two daughters, and I would say they they don't struggle with it as much. And then I have to be like, oh, shoot, that's right. They're disappointing me, and that's what I taught them to do.
Exactly. Wait, they're talking back. That's what I
I
wanted them
I
to do.
know, right, right.
Darn it. Makes it harder, but in a way,
It does, but I'm like, I know where you stand, like I know who you are. You're clear about who you are. I really admire that when they are clear about who they are. I think that's kind. That's a kind thing. I always say I have all these phrases that I think have really helped me get through, and one is clear is kind, which is a Brene Brown phrase. Being clear is kind. So when you are letting somebody know who you are, that's a really kind thing. They
it's
know what
true.
to expect. They know how to be around you.
It's honest, right? So people know who you are and they can make their own decision about if they want to stick around or not.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think even with you made me think about parenting. My kids are all in their 20s, but like I had big white sticky notes on the walls that was kind of clearly defining what appropriate behavior was, and that in a positive way. Not like if you do this, but like I felt like if they crossed a line, a boundary, it was like you don't want the consequence, don't make the choice. And this is the choice that you made that went against what we're trying to be about in this family. And so again, it's kind to our children, even though it's hard, it's really kind to them. It's a kind thing. We value kindness, right? To really be clear about what works and what doesn't work in this family. And
Yeah, that's true.
we can't take care of their feelings in that moment. We're setting those boundaries. So I mean, that's a big rule that it's actually a quote in the book by Melody Beattie, says you can't simultaneously set a boundary and take care of someone else's feelings.
Yeah, being a mom, like I know I still struggle with my people pleasing, but especially like you said, trying to set boundaries, learn to not people please, but also trying not to manage other people's emotions at the same time, right? How do we set the boundaries, but then how do we not try to jump in and make it better for our kids? Because I definitely see it being generational, especially the different generations that I see with my clients. The older women that are still struggling with people pleasing, it's so ingrained that they're having a real hard time. But as younger and younger clients and women come in, the younger ones, they actually are able to set more boundaries. And my 10-year-old daughter has no problem telling me how she feels. And I tell her all the time, I want to be you when I grow up, because she will be honest, with
Yeah,
me, with her friends, and most of them will be honest with her.
that's
Um,
awesome. Love that.
yeah, yes. So I'm just wondering, with mothering, I imagine it makes it, intensify our people pleasing because it's so hard to not try to manage our children's emotions and possibly our partners, or most likely our partners also.
Yeah,
It's a lot
yeah,
of managing emotions
yeah.
and trying to make everything calm and peaceful,
Well, it's
right?
not always going to be calm and peaceful.
I know. But we
I
want it to be.
I know, I know. I think that the things that helped me get through the most with parenting kids and boundaries was that the more upset they got, the more I realized that they were probably taking advantage of one of my lack of boundaries. So the bigger the tantrum, the more I could say I was doing a good job. And so that was kind of like this needed to happen, so to speak. Not that I was heartless, but it was kind of like I knew that it was going to pass, right? It usually does. And in those moments, I always kind of say, you need a plan. I need a plan for when we do disappoint someone. How are we going to deal with that guilt?
Yes.
What are our go-to things when our nervous systems now are disrupted? What are your go-to things?
Right. That's true.
And for me, it was a lot of little slogans: choose discomfort over resentment. I would say, things like feelings are the keys of the piano. She's just playing a dark tune right now. It's just things that would just help me to realize is that this is going to pass, right? This feeling is gonna fade. Soon she'll be happy again, or they'll be happy again. But this is for their benefit. And I always thought of it, raising kids, as kind of like they were in training camp. They're in training camp, and I want them to make mistakes here while they have a coach. Yeah, so let's figure this out together. Let's figure it out together.
One of the questions is about, what role does guilt play in keeping us in people pleasing? But in some of your affirmations and mantras that you use, it sounds like it's trying to remove that feeling of guilt. Like, oh God, they're having tantrum. I did something wrong. Now I need to go back to the people pleasing. Right. So I
Right.
feel like that guilt is a motivator to stay within people pleasing. And how do we help women move away from feeling guilty when they're
Hmm.
holding the boundaries, or just trying to change up what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think guilt comes from I'm doing something wrong, but according to who, right? According to who am I doing something wrong? And a big thing of my book and step one is the shoulds.
Yes.
So who is holding the measuring stick? One of the books I bought at my kids' book fair, a book called Confessions of a Slacker Mom. And I reread that book a lot. It was about a mom who had boundaries and wasn't doing all the things that she thought that she should do. She called herself a slacker mom. I don't think she's a slacker mom. She's kind of a hero mom, but that was the name of the book. And it was kind of heartwarming too. I share in my book when my son gave me a t-shirt for Mother's Day one year. And at first it startled me and made me a little upset, but it was a t-shirt that said, "World's okayest mom."
Interesting.
We work so hard to be this super mom, but sometimes that super mom is overrated, because
Yes.
if you're people pleasing and you're the world's greatest mom, maybe you don't have the best boundaries. No judgment, but it was kind of endearing to be like, you know what? It's okay to be the okayest mom. And what does that
Yeah.
even mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I was thinking about, dads and how the expectations are so different for them. And maybe that's something we can think about as maybe a goal is to have the same expectations for women as for
Yeah,
men.
I mean, I think guilt says that we're doing something wrong, but there's most likely a should behind that, right? The shoulding. I should
Hmm.
I should be being the PTA mom, one of the things that I didn't allow my kids to do, or my husband at the time agreed that we wouldn't allow our children to play organized sports until they were 10.
Mm.
But I knew when my oldest was 10 to play, would have an 8-year-old, a 6-year, and a 3-year-old. And if I would allowed him to play 4 years earlier, I couldn't be schlepping around kids. So again, it's, I think really for women, what kind of family do you want to have? And then make that be your goal,
Yeah.
not what it should look like.
Gosh, that's such a big one right now, especially with sports and activities. There's so many expectations around what you're supposed to do and what you need to do
Yeah.
to make sure your kid has a
Yeah.
leg up and, gets to the place they need to be. And it is so much pressure and stress
I
on the
bet.
parents. I mean, way more than the kids. I have clients who have a 5 and 3 and 1 year old, and the 5 year old's in like 4 sports, and they're carting the 3 and 1 year old around, and they
I can't
both work full
imagine.
time.
I can't imagine.
And I'm just like, you guys might want to think about the fact that like he's 5 and he's got more years of this in your house. So maybe we think about taking the pressure off of ourselves and really, like you said, what do I want my family life to be like? Do I want to be constantly on the go, or do I want to have rest? Do I want to be able to have relaxation time and connection time and not just being going back and forth and trying to throw dinner on really quick, which of course we're going to do that sometimes. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
times in our lives where that's going to
Right.
happen,
Right.
but does it have to be at 5, 3, and 1? Or can it be delayed a little? So I like that. I like that you guys really thought about it and made a decision to wait. I mean,
I
that's
mean,
pretty
it was
cool.
hard. It was hard, but it's like, what at the end, what do you really want them to do? Do you want them to get a scholarship for that sport? Then do it. Or I would also say for parents, like it's almost more advantageous to put them in a camp for 1 week in the summer
True.
and get it
Yeah.
all out in one week,
Yeah.
what they would do in a whole season.
Right. Because you don't even have to be there for most of that.
You don't have to, and it's childcare.
It's childcare.
Hmm.
I love that. But yeah, I think it's just like the idea of there's expectations that maybe there's alternatives to, and we
Yes.
can really think outside the box
Yeah.
with the idea of if we're not trying to have it look a certain way or be fitting into a mold, what is it that we as the mom or as the dad or the couple really want?
Yes.
What is it
Yes.
with? And I feel like it's really difficult to actually tap into that sometimes because you're not even aware you're not doing that. You're just kind of going with the flow and doing what everybody else is doing. And I think now that I have older kids, I'm like, I cannot do that. I have no
Yeah.
capacity for this. And I think
Yeah.
part of it's perimenopause, but part of it's just burnout. I've been doing it for too many years and I'm not able to do all these extra things that the sports require. So I can only do so much. And I think as younger moms, I think it's easier to just say, well, it's okay. We'll figure it out because you're not quite there with the burnout yet.
Or I think involving the kids in this situation, I was thinking about, birthday parties, like, yeah, you got invited to three, like, I'm willing to buy a gift for one. Are you willing to use your money to buy one? Like just things like that, where like they have some ownership, like you were saying, Adrienne, what are you willing to do? That's what people pleasing is. Like, I know what Kate wants. I know Kate wants to go to that party. What do I want? And again, teaching them like I am willing to do that after you take care of this. It's not that it's not a no, but I think we have to realize that we have agency and choice. And I think so much we just go along because of the guilt or because it's everybody else is doing it. But again, it's that making intentional choices for your kids.
Yeah.
What's best for them.
Also, there's a lot of disappointing your kids if you say no. And I think that's the biggest issue for me as a people pleaser to watch them just like crumble or get mad at you or me, right? That's another thing that, like, as sensitive people pleasers, we just don't want anyone mad at us ever, especially our kids. We never want them to feel bad, even though we know consciously that that's a good thing and it happens and we can't control it.
Right.
It's so hard to actually put it into practice. Do you
Yeah.
have any like ways that you get around that or advice you give in those kinds of situations?
I mean, that's one of the advice that I would say is you do have to disappoint people and you have to get good at being uncomfortable doing that. Just get to the used to the feeling like that's an emotion that's going through their body and they're expressing that. They express hurt when they fall down. So this is just another thing that, I mean, it's hard. It's hard. Believe me, you have to be willing to, I mean, I had 4 kids, doors slamming, the name calling, if you tolerate that, maybe you don't tolerate name calling, but whatever it is it's like they can't make all the rules. And part of setting rules is in the game of life. I talk about in one of the steps, tolerate less. And, I'm at a basketball game and the ref calls a foul on somebody and the fans start to say, you can't do that. And it's same with our kids. There's just rules.
So what are the 12 steps and what do they do for women who need to kind of move away from people pleasing and that way of being taught to be?
Well, the reason I wrote the book was 26 years ago this month, I was waiting to give birth to my third child, and I was anticipating 6 weeks after giving birth to have surgery. And I was going to be finding out whether I had cancer or not. And I ended up having cancer. And that was my wake-up call. That was 26 years ago. And I knew that I needed to heal physically. I had thyroid cancer and had multiple surgeries and I knew that it was an emotional issue as well for me.
Yeah.
And so I started to realize that I needed to speak up and speak out. So that was the wake-up call. And then about 5 years later, I went into therapy.
Yeah.
Step one, yes, yay, therapy, Leah.
Yes.
Step one is let that should go. And that's where I started, letting those shoulds go, kind of defining a life that was meaningful to me and the kind of life that I wanted to have. And whether it went against religious or cultural norms or the way my mom did it, I was in charge of my life and my children and my family. And so these are not research based. This is a book about it's kind of my Bible or my testimony of my journey. And
Nice.
they've been added to. And so, yeah, each step begins with a story. It has reflection questions, has a freedom toolkit in it with some practical ways to practice that step. Yeah, the steps, I think, if I would start with one, it would obviously be the shoulds. I think the biggest thing that a woman can do is start to become aware of where she may be shoulding on herself and where she may have choice, and to recognize that she does have choice. So starting with really just pausing, that pause with the request. I know with multiple kids, each of you are probably bombarded every day with requests. We have requests coming at us all the time. And then they're on the sports teams, and then there's requests there, and then there's school requests, and then there's social requests. So even just having a minute or telling your kids you're not going to decide in the moment.
Right.
That you need a couple hours, even that they're clear about that. So that you can have the time and space to make a decision that's best for you and your child and the family. What's your bandwidth? What bandwidth do you have? Because that they have way more energy than we do, and we only have a bit limited.
Yeah, that's so true. But I feel as I think about, I have started to say no a lot more to some requests, and I feel like I'm pressing up against this resistance. I don't know if it's my resistance or it's just cultural resistance, but it feels hard, like really hard. You know what I mean? It feels like it's harder than just saying yes and just like doing it.
You are prioritizing yourself, and there's nothing to show
tangible.
That.
Yeah,
Nothing
exactly.
tangible. It's like, oh, we're going to just sit at home.
Yeah.
Why couldn't I go? We're not doing anything anyway. Then there's this pressure to, well, you probably heard this phrase, the JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like the intangible is that you feel better, and it's not something that your kids are going to be like, oh, great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Good reason,
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so hard, because they're not, we all are used to, I'm used to being on the go, doing something exciting, or
yes.
What did you do this weekend? And
yes.
you sat around, you played games, you rested. I'm sure as moms with younger kids than mine, I look at people at Halloween and the costumes you all have to do and the pressure.
Yeah, I just saw this one mom on Instagram. She was saying that her kid goes to therapy for anxiety, and the therapist said to her, hey, I did have a sense of kind of how things are going at home. And I'm wondering if you could, instead of being busy, doing busy things, going out, doing activities, she said, instead, can you just stay home and just be with him for a little bit and like just connect with him on maybe some puzzle or playing a game or doing something really like almost like wasting time.
Yes. What we consider wasting time. Yeah.
What we consider wasting time, right? And the mom was like, she did it. She's like, and it was the best thing they ever did together. Because I feel like even as a mom too, especially on the weekends, sitting down and like I don't know, playing Wordle with my kid feels like sometimes like I'm wasting time and I need to be more productive and all these things. It's so useful for them to have that sort of downtime with you. That's like there's no agenda. There's nothing that they have to rush to or do or be or anything. And I think that's something that maybe we can incorporate a little more. I can for sure. Just kind of thinking about that is definitely an expectation that we're putting on ourselves to not ever really have any downtime or wasting time in a sense, but I think
Right.
that's useful.
One of the phrases that I liked from a psychological point of view, it's rules without relationships lead to rebellion.
Yep.
So,
Connection.
it was important to me, and again, thinking about choices, that relationship part, like that woman on Instagram. I mean, that's building a relationship. So thinking about what are the things that will build a relationship. So when the rules come, there's a relationship there to hang its hat on.
Yeah, and I always say like the parents I work with sometimes are so intent on just like getting not necessarily on purpose getting stuff done, but like they have to get out the door or they have to get the dinner on the table. They have to and I say sometimes to them, how much time do you spend just talking about things that you need to do or doing the things you need to do versus just having a conversation? Like,
Hmm.
is it always about the stuff we need to get done, or is it just being in
Yeah.
relationship? Like, is
Yeah.
there a connection piece there?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to sort of forget about that and to like not prioritize it. But if you prioritize connection, which is like pretty much what my coaching business is based on, you
Right.
have much more likelihood of getting more of a, I want to say like not rule followers, but you have people that are going to cooperate. You have kids that are going to be willing to work with you because you have a good relationship with them. So
Right.
always in a way, if we prioritize good relationship, it always pays off, I think.
I mean, it doesn't feel good if you're the always the enforcer, right? You want to enjoy them.
Yes, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I found that as the fourth one came along, I tended to do a lot of what the older kids wanted, the three older ones. But then as I evolved, I started getting more into dance and art, and it was like I incorporated my younger and the others into more of what I wanted to do. So even on the weekends, if there is something that the mom likes to do it and bring them along or see if they want to join in instead of always thinking it has to be driven by the child.
Yeah. That's a really
So
good
it's
point.
so child driven that we forget that we're a person. And I think, the biggest thing that I hope is that our kids see us taking care of ourselves, that they see us, hey, you know what? I'm a human too. I'm a human and I have feelings. And if I'm always looking fine and I'm always being this super mom martyr, what are they going to see? They're going to see a grumpy, grouchy, resentful mom that has nothing left to give at the end of the day.
Yeah. I feel like for me, looking back, I would be happy if my mom did things for herself. I would feel like less pressure. If everything was kid centered, it's a little bit unconsciously the child is the one that's in charge a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think as a kid, you would want your mom to be or your dad to be doing things that they enjoy for many reasons, but also because it's like, well, this is their life. Like
Yeah.
they're the ones that are making decisions. I'm not the one that's always responsible for that. So it's just like it's nice to, I think, for kids to see that for sure. And it's definitely good modeling.
Yeah, for sure.
With all of this, I feel like we could talk all day about society and the expectations and why we're getting stuck in the shoulds and the people pleasing, but also with the pressure that we put on ourselves, moms, from society, from friends, from family, from everybody. If someone wanted to work on the steps, take your book and work on it, how would you suggest to them to do this, but without taking on more pressure? To then think of this as more as of a to do, right? I'm going to read this book. I'm going to go through
Right,
this and
right.
I love it. I work with it with my clients because it is like a journal also with the reflective questions, but taking that pressure off of themselves and saying, this isn't something that we need to add to our to do list. This is a different way of living and seeing ourselves and seeing ourselves in relations with other people. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I think the pausing, I think would be a place to start is dropping into your heart. And step seven, drop into your heart, where I feel like people pleasers were so in our minds, which is a good place to be, where we are intuitive and sensitive and But there's also the heart piece where when our bodies are relaxed, talking about that trauma response where we feel safe, then our mind can relax. And so whatever that looks like for you, and I always say, even if it's a pause can be 10 seconds, a pause can be a minute, a pause can be 5 minutes, but just some place where you can even just speak something gentle to yourself, just to, being gentle, I think, because we are high achieving women. People pleasers do hold a lot. We hold everybody's emotions as well as the weight of the world, but it's really a journey of gentleness and compassion for ourselves, as much gentleness and compassion for ourselves as we have for others. As much gentleness as we have for others and compassion. Adrienne, I was reading your website and I'm sure you have some amazing tools for children to honor their feelings we have to do the same. We have to have space and energy to do that personal work, which I know you have and I have, and I know Leah has as well, to do the personal work. Even if that's the thing that you tell your kids you're going to do. I'm going to therapy to learn more about the language of emotions so that I can be healthier. So it really does start with the awareness, the pausing, the awareness, recognizing that we have choice and being as kind to ourselves as we are to everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. I was talking to one of my friends and she was saying that she doesn't feel like she can talk to her daughter about how she feels. Her daughter's a teenager, 18 actually. And I just thought that was so interesting because I feel like a lot of people think that if they say that they're upset or they're struggling as a mom or as a parent or even as a person to their kids, that it's going to sort of throw off their kid and make them feel maybe unstable or unsafe or something. But honestly, I think the more that we're able to model talking about how we feel and talking about like the fact that we're not perfect and we struggle and we have challenges, I just think that that makes it so much easier for them to go there too and to feel like it's okay to be like that. If we're just telling them it's okay to fail, and we're telling them it's okay to have these feelings and not showing it. And so I like to do this sort of like, well, I'm not necessarily going at my kid. Like I'm sad right now. I'm just like maybe talking to my husband or talking to my friend and saying these things so that it's just normalized that we don't have to be we don't have to be perfect all the time. We don't have to have it all figured out all the time.
That's really my business is around helping people to be more honest, 5% more honest, because it's really hard for people pleasers to be the one to say I need help or to say that I'm struggling, because we're used to be the doers, the givers. And I had a time where I couldn't understand why my mom wouldn't help me I had 4 kids. Why aren't you coming over to help me? I know your mom helped you. Why aren't you? And she simply said, you seem like you have it all together.
Interesting.
Yep.
So we do our own projecting of selves, and I need to be 5% more honest and say to my mom. I could have said to my mom through the years that I am struggling. I know I don't look like I am, but I am. So look out for those friends of yours that look like they have it all together.
Yeah. Nobody does.
Nobody does. Nobody does until it crashes down. They're like, what?
Yeah,
Why didn't you
exactly.
tell us? I know. So don't do that. That's why I wrote the book.
I love that.
Yeah. And where can people find your book and find more information about you if they want to work with you?
My website is trinastutzman.com, and my book is on Amazon and where books are sold, even at Walmart.
Nice.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll link it in the show notes also so that they can just click on the link and any handles or anything social media wise, we could link to you too and just make sure people can reach out to you and connect if they want to learn more. Because I think this is a really important topic and something that I struggle with and a lot of I think people that are listening also struggle with. So I think it'll be very helpful.
Well, let's make ourselves a priority. We're as important as everybody else. And so when we continue to make other people a priority, we suffer and they don't get the best of us. They really don't. They think they're getting the best of us, but it's not the best of us.
Amen.
Right.
Love it.
Thank you
All right.
so
Thanks,
much for this
ladies.
conversation. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for coming on.
Yes,
It
thank you,
was a
Trina.
pleasure.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Take care.